physician, athlete, author, nationally known speaker on exercise and fitness. At the age of 67, cardiologist George Sheehan is all of these and more. Sports Illustrated writes, George Sheehan may be our most important philosopher of sport. With 21 Boston marathons behind him and numerous running records, his message is simply that each one of us can enjoy the rewards of fitness and the athletic experience.
Thank you. I think right off the bat, I must say that running is boring. That will make many of you in the crowd feel a little more relaxed. I know, because swimming is boring. I swim for a half hour and look at the clock and it's 5 minutes. And I know there's probably some of you in the room here that have done that. They've run for a half hour and found it's only 5 minutes. And so I'm not here to promote running. I may mention running. I will certainly mention running, because that's my way of attaining all these great good things that we're going to speak about. But actually what I'm pushing, in a sense, I'm detailing a new drug, and the generic here is exercise. Running is simply a brand. And when I say running, you just substitute your brand, and the only problem is if you don't have a brand. And that's what I'm here tonight, to push exercise and for you to find your brand, particular brand of exercise. Because that's what I'm doing. I'm really preaching fitness. The why is the most important part of anything we do. Once you know the why, you'll accept any how. And what I'd like to speak about is the specific why of fitness. Obviously, there are millions of Americans that have turned to fitness. There are any number out on the roads. There are millions in racquetball facilities. There are equal numbers doing aerobic dancing. Probably right at this minute, there's somebody stuck in a Nautilus machine and being extracted. And so it goes. This whole country, for some reason, has become involved in movement. And the question is why? And why you should join them. And the answer is very simple. Your life depends upon it. And by that I mean your total life, the person you are, your longevity, your life expectancy, your creativity, your success in work, your domestic bliss. Virtually everything in your life depends on becoming fit. D.H. Lawrence wrote an essay in defense of the novel, which is essentially indefensible, as you know. I have about 800 books, and I have one novel, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. That is the only novel written in English I know of. Don't bother with the last 2 chapters, incidentally. Tom Sawyer arrives and destroys the novel. But in defending the novel, D.H. Lawrence said, the novel is a supreme work of art. He said, every other artist only sees bits of man, the essayist, the painter, the sculptor. Only the novelist sees man, total, human, living, alive. He said, the novel is the bright book of life. There you see man whole hog. And that's what fitness has to do with the whole hog. We get up each morning to write our own novel. You know, Robert Frost once said he never read novels because he was too busy living his own. That's what we do. We get up each morning to add another chapter, another page to this ongoing drama that we're living. Life is a drama, and we act it out. And we bring to that the full attributes that fitness gives us. You can see these, as Lawrence says, these specialists that see only bits of us. Those are important bits. I'm a cardiologist, and I can tell you right here and now that exercise and becoming fit will add years to your life. I don't think there's any question of that. Somewhere about 1968, America took a 180-degree change in lifestyle. And we began to see this mysterious drop in cardiovascular mortality. And so it went. We see now that longevity, in the last decade, longevity is increasing. And so that in the process of this this change in the United States. We have had this improvement in our longevity. There was an article in the Annals of Internal Medicine in the last year taking into account all the therapeutic miracles with drugs and surgery, looking at that cardiovascular mortality, and established that only 40%, some 42% of that improvement was due to drugs and surgery. The rest was due to lifestyle. What was happening, as John Knowles had predicted back when he was head of HEW back in the 50s, the next breakthrough in American medicine, the next breakthrough in American medicine would be the patient taking responsibility.
My name is John Malarkey. I'm 37 years old. I work for a merger and acquisition group within a small regional investment bank. I have been an athlete for about 20 years now. I think that rowing and fitness have done a great deal for my life. I've a great number of people through athletics who have become my longest and great number of people through athletics who have become my longest and closest friends. I believe that athletics or sports participation can be very helpful for people who lead otherwise sedentary lives. From my own experience, I know while my job is stressful, it is still very sedentary. I spend the bulk of my day sitting at a desk with a telephone on my ear, and I frequently go home at night exhausted mentally from the strain, and sometimes can't even get to sleep at night, worrying about and thinking about problems that I have at my job that I need to solve tomorrow that I should have solved today. I like being fit just for my own personal level of self-esteem, I guess. I've always been involved in athletics, and I have known people who have lost that, and I've vowed that I'm going to keep it right up until the very end.
So somewhere around 1968, we began to take responsibility for ourselves, to change our lifestyle. And in so doing, we began to alter our coronary risk factors. Exercise, we find, is the prime way to lose weight. The war against fat will not be won by diet alone. You have to make the exercise-diet connection. Exercise reduces your cholesterol, reduces your tendency to diabetes, helps with your hypertension. So when you deal with coronary risk factors, you must exercise. And now that we have Ralph Paffenbarger's latest study of the Harvard alumni, we see that exercise alone disposes of one risk factor. The sedentary life is a risk factor above and beyond smoking, high cholesterol, hypertension, obesity, and any tendency to diabetes. So exercise alone is going to add years to your life. The Center for Disease Control in Atlanta studied running as a drug, just as they would an anti-inflammatory, an antibiotic. And they were studying it for two effects. One, weight loss, and the second was cessation of smoking. They studied the runners in the Peachtree event 1 year apart. And they discovered that running was the absolute best way in the medical literature to lose weight and to stop smoking. So again, we see when we start exercising, when we become fit, we reduce our coronary risk factors. We add those years to our life. What Ralph Paffenbarger found in that study was that all causes of death were reduced by exercise. So I could stand here and say, fitness, the reason to be fit is because you're going to add years to your life, and then I could walk off the stage, because that's enough. That would be enough reason right there. But there are many more reasons. A physiologist will tell you that not only will you add years to your life, but you're going to do something much more important. One of the things that's impossible without exercise. You might get lucky and add years to your life, but you will add hours to your day. And there is no other way to add hours to your day except by exercising. To get that energy, there's nothing in a tin, there's no surgery, there's no trick of mind that will get you that energy. You know, back in 1910, Arnold Bennett wrote a book called How to Live on 24 Hours a Day. He'd come upon this great secret, he said, that we're not going to get any more time. That's it. Our life is made up of these 24-hour compartments, and there's 8 hours for sleep. That leaves us 16 full hours to work out our lives. And the question is whether we get it. The average individual, it seems to me, suffers from a condition called exercise deficiency. Somewhere around 5 o'clock, they start to slowly go into a fugue state, slip into a semi-coma. Go home, sit in front of their roused for supper, and then go back in front of the tube and fritter away the rest of the day, as Arnold Bennett said. And if they were frittering away the rest of the day in 1910 London, think of the superior ways we have of frittering away our days. And so that 8 hours that we have to ourselves to develop ourselves, to make a person, is lost because we don't have the energy for it. And the physiologist can show us that through a fitness program we will get that energy. Exercise physiology is the science of human performance. They will produce a fitness formula, 30 minutes. 30 minutes, not miles, laps, anything else. 30 minutes. At what pace? Comfortable. Dial your body to comfortable, says the physiologist. Do that 4 times a week, and within 12 weeks, you will improve your physical work capacity 300 to 400%. QED. If it doesn't work, you get your money back. So the physiologists say, here is the reason to get fit. I can lengthen your day. I can give you the energy to fill that day with happy, healthy, productive activity. And not only that, and perhaps even more important to many of us, we can defeat aging. You can age fast or you can age slow. And so when you exercise, you diminish the physiological rate of aging to where you don't even notice it. What Emerson once said, what you lose in age, you can afford to lose. At 61, he had a little note in his journal. He said, I look inside and I don't see wrinkles or a tired heart. I see an unspent youth. You can have that unspent youth. That's what the physiologists tell us. Where you can make your chronological and physiological age coincide. The average individual in the United States is probably physiologically 20 to 30 years older than his chronological age. Extend that out to coincide with the fitness graph, you find that an untrained 30-year-old acts at the same energy level as a trained 60-year-old. I did this test at SCORE and found that my VO max compared to a 19-year-old Army recruit. Where do they get those 19-year-old Army recruits? See, what I think is that I'm just a normal 67-year-old. A normal meaning being the best you can be. No one should want to be average. You know, Garrison Keillor does this thing about Lake Wobegon where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above average. And it gets a laugh, because how could all children be above average? Absolutely easy to be above average. It's just to try to be normal, to get the most out of your body. You know, all of us are an animal, an artist, a hero, or a saint. The science of living is to become a good animal. Spencer, in his treatise on education, said, if you wish to be a success in this life, you must first be a good animal. That's what the physicians tell us. Have the lifestyle. The exercise producing the good animal automatically gives you the lifestyle that your doctor wants you to have. The exercising body attains the right weight. The exercising body doesn't want to smoke. The exercising body drinks moderately, it sleeps well, handles stress better, you see. So when you become a good animal, you do those things. The same as when St. Paul said, put on the new man. The new man, you see, is someone who's not tempted to do bad things. And so when we become good animals, we begin to follow those instincts in our body. We listen to our body. We do the things that our body has a mind of its own. My body won't eat a donut anymore. You know? I say, oh, one donut. What's one donut? No way. No donuts, says my body. And so it goes. As you work on this, this is the science of living. You know, you think about how much time you spent learning how to make a living and how little time you spent learning how to live. How does this body work? How does it work best? You see, what is the science of this thing? And so we go back and find out how your body works, this human machine. through which we express our soul. And what we're doing, in a sense, is repeating things that have gone on over the centuries. Every time we've had an affluent society, every time we've had all the money and time to be anything we want to be, we go back to the body. Can you believe that? In the 5th century BC, the first aristocrats, they spent an hour a day in the gymnasium of the Palestra. They thought the body and mind and soul were one inextricable mix, that you train the body as you would train the mind. Each was entitled to its own time. And so their idea of this, the word the aristocrat, comes from the Greek idea, from the Greek word arete. Arete means to function as you were supposed to function, to excel, to seek excellence. But that excellence is your own individual excellence. And my function is to be the best possible George Sheehan. You stop comparing yourself to other people. That's the point. You are now in a struggle between what is potential in you and what you are making actual. That's what the Greeks thought. And so their word for leisure was skole. Their leisure time was school. They went to school on themselves. They saw this life as an opportunity to create a self and then to create a life for that self to lead. One was the science, the second was the art. So the first thing is this, to become a good animal.
My name is Roger Schwab. I'm the director of a fitness center and sports medicine clinic. I'm 41 years old and I have a 10-month-old son, and I want to be able to enjoy life with him 10 or 20 years down the road. So I exercise to try to stay in good shape. I eat less calories because I want to stay lean, and I think the combination of both is the best for me. I work out intensely when I train, but I feel good most of the time, and I don't feel like I get sick too often, and I feel really good about myself, and there's a certain self-esteem I have about myself that I feel good, and I try to pass it along to other people. And you know, again, we're not fanatics about it. We try to take it in moderation, and we try to help people help themselves in not extreme ways, but in moderate ways that work. Most anybody can do it, but you know, it's hard work, and you have to be acknowledged, and you have to be told you're okay. And if you make, you know, training and eating habits like study habits, and you do it over a long period of time, you can usually get results. I guess you would call us a close-knit family. I didn't push my wife into exercise. She was involved in it before she ever met me. I'm involved in her workouts, and that I push her and train her, but she would work hard even if I wasn't here. Now that we have our son, we like to share it together. It's just part of our lives together, and we share most things together.
And the physician will say, here is the reason to be fit. And the physiologist will say, here is the reason to be fit. You are going to become a good animal. You are going to maximize your longevity for the first time. And then you're going to increase your life expectancy. I like to think of those as two different things. Life expectancy meaning what I expect out of the day when I get up in the morning. I started to run like 20 years ago or more, and I doubled my life expectancy. In the last 20 years, I've lived 40 years. The end of my work became the beginning of my day. And in that day, that extra 8 hours, I created a new self. I found renewed energy, creativity, self-esteem. All those things came from my exercise program, which was really a play program. I had found my play. That's the important thing. And so there would be enough reason right there to become that good animal. But then we have other parts of this animal thing. We have this mind and our emotions. And so the psychologists say the reason to be fit is because of your mental health or your emotional health. Bill Morgan, who's a sports psychologist up at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, has studied a number of trained individuals and found what he calls the iceberg profile. He studies a number of negative emotions, anxiety, tension, confusion, depression, and then records them. And he's found that in trained individuals, these all are below average, below surface, so to speak. And then he analyzes one positive value, and that is called vigor, zest, enthusiasm. And there's this tremendous rise. People that are trained and undergoing and have accepted the need for the discipline of the body have this tremendous vigor. So he calls this the iceberg profile, because all the negative emotions are not expressed, and we have this zest and enthusiasm. Morgan is just one of a number of psychologists who have studied trained individuals who have found this diminished anxiety and depression and increased self-esteem, even increased cognitive skills. But we can go back to one of the great American thinkers, possibly the greatest. Certainly our greatest psychologist, our greatest philosopher, William James. He was the first psychologist. In fact, he said the first lecture on psychology he ever heard was one he gave. He wrote the book on psychology. And so, back in 1898, he gave a talk to the Boston School of Gymnastics. It was a commencement address to this class, all women. It was called The Gospel of Relaxation. And in there you can read Hurry's the type A personality described by Friedman, word for word described by James, of the reason for our breakdowns is this internal tension and storms, this attention to deadlines and concern with results that bothers us. And that night, James called for a training of the body and the mind as a team of horses. He said that fitness lent a background of sanity, serenity, and good humor to your life. If you're going to get up in the morning to write your own novel, I recommend those values. Getting up with sanity, serenity, and good humor. Of course, it's going to be destroyed with the first incoming phone call, but it's a good thing to start with, you see. James said there is a peace and confidence that comes from every muscle of a well-trained body. And here in 1898, he does a little women's lib bit in the middle of it. And he talks about the tabby cats of Norway. He said the housewives of Norway who had deserted their firesides, he said, taken to skis and become lithe and audacious creatures and leaders in their country. He hoped that would happen in the United States sooner or later. And it did. It did. Took a while, but it did. And so here we have James, the supreme psychologist, telling us here is the reason that we must attend to our bodies to get fit and deal with our emotional problems, take care of these abnormal states. He mentions Freud because he was just coming into prominence then about the inner life, how important our inner life was, and how important fitness was to that inner life. You see, a lot of people get converted to fitness from sin. There's a conversion from sin. And James said there was a second conversion that came from inside, and from this inner life we had, from our subconscious. And it doesn't tell us how bad we are, it tells us how good we are. That's a new message, that you're good. This thing percolating from inside and penetrating our conscious, not about the bad things we've done, but the great things that are in our future. So there's another reason to be fit. We have now added to our years to our life, hours to our day, and we're handling stress. See, we're changing this inner person so we can handle stress better. Of course, we know that activity is the best immediate way to handle stress. That's first aid. If you want to handle stress, the best way to do it is go out and run 10 miles. Get exhausted. I used to do that when I was in practice, along about noon, just when I was going to punch the next patient in the nose. I get suited out and up and run out the back door. And I'd come back, and you couldn't bother me the rest of the day. I'd be smiles for the rest of the day. So we know this, that people can handle stress through action and kind of ride the emotions. And I know any number of runners who have handled tragedies, literary tragedies in their family, a suicide or a divorce or some sort of tremendously difficult situation where that running was really their salvation. It was a place they were able to finally come to grips with the problem. I've had runners say, I can't think about this until I go out on the road because it's just too upsetting. So there is a way, you see, this fitness program is going to be a superb way to handle stress, acutely and in the long term. But more than that, because we must not only be an animal, we must be an artist.
My name is Ann Hobson-Pilot. I'm principal harpist with the Boston Symphony Orchestra and the Boston Pops. I've been with the BSO for 17 years. The harp is an instrument that requires a lot of dexterity and physical strength in terms of your arms and shoulders. We have to keep our arms up all the time in order to allow them to be free. And so when I started into a fitness program, I found that I was able, it helped my endurance on the harp as well. I was able to play longer and not get tired so easily.
My name is Prentice Pilot, and I'm a teacher in the Boston Public Schools, and I've been teaching for the past 20 years or so. And I also play with the Boston Pops Esplanade Orchestra during the summertime. Well, exercise and fitness has helped me in a way to have more endurance when I perform. And just in general, I think that exercising, there's no separation between mind and body. I think if you're alert mentally, you can concentrate more on what you're doing when I'm playing. I can concentrate more on what I'm doing when I'm playing music. So, you know, it really adds a great deal to my life to work out daily, and I just feel so much better too as a result of it.
We have found, and people who are in fitness programs found, that hour you spend, if that hour is running or cycling or swimming or walking, is probably the most creative time of the day. The art of thinking demands isolation, concentration on the problem and isolation from other people. And so here, for a time, you are alone with your thoughts, and you can concentrate, and there is a play that goes on in the mind. I think it was, I'm not sure whether it was Diogenes or Archimedes, used to run through the Agora in Athens yelling, "Eureka, I have found it." It's in comics, you see it, there's an electric light bulb that goes on over the person's head. It's this aha. You see, I have found it. And that's what they're looking for. And I said, I'm going to guarantee you that you will never get it in your laboratory. You will never get it at your desk. You're always going to get it in movement, away, in play. Because that's the way it happens. If you look at the journals of any thinker that you where you read this classic that was written by this individual, you're going to find that those thoughts were arrived at on walks. Because they didn't know about jogging in those days, you see. I'm sure Nietzsche would have been a jogger, or Kierkegaard, or Thoreau certainly would have been a jogger. Emerson, possibly, you see. But at any rate, these ideas came to people when they were out walking, and they were freed from work. It's when, in the absence of work, that you become creative, when there's no more pressure on you to do. You sit down there and want to have a good thought, you're not going to have a good thought. See? This exercise is a celebration of the body, but it's a playground for the mind. When we hear about runner's high, it's hard to believe it, because those people are really members of a cult. They've been brainwashed. This is self-hypnosis. Who would believe an ordinary person coming back from the road and saying, I had a mystical experience? I mean, put them away, you see? So you don't have to believe runners that these things, these great good things happen on the road, that you settle problems on. All you have to do is look into these books. There's a whole litany of experiences written by people like Thoreau and Stevenson and Hazlitt and Kierkegaard and Kant and Rousseau, all about the ideas that came to them while walking. And not only that, they describe the very experiences that runners have, and swimmers do, and cyclists. I saw that the Pope was given a bike, and he specifically made the point that this type of sport lends itself to contemplation. And so what we're seeing on the roads, when you pass these people on the roads, are the new contemplatives. That's a highfalutin idea to think that ordinary people, and even a neighbor of yours, is a contemplative. But it's true. Molière has that great play in Molière where one character was surprised to find he was speaking prose his entire life. See? Contemplation isn't that abnormal a thing. Ordinary people can contemplate. Contemplation is simply getting lost in what you're doing. Plotinus, I think, described it as reading a book and then entering into the story that's going on. It's just complete absorption in this. And so we become contemplative. St. Thomas Aquinas once said, our destiny is to run to the edge of the world and then off into darkness. Well, we run to the edge of the world and then off into light. That's what absolutely happens. We are the new contemplatives. And in that, we find all these ideas that we come back with. I once spoke to an artist who said that 80% of art is spent away from the easel. It's that free-flowing thing that we can do out on the roads or swimming. I have a friend that tells me every experience I have running, he has had swimming. There's two types of meditation you can do on the road. You can do a mindless meditation, which is a superb stress management sort of thing where you make your mind a blank. That's what TM is all about, making your mind a blank. You get this kind of nonsense word that you repeat. Or you can use Benson's technique, the relaxation technique. Or you can just count your breathing, 1, 2, 3, 4, until there's nothing then except your breathing. Completely mindless, wonderful stress management. But the other one is mindful, where you attend to this stream of consciousness that William James spoke of. Now, we have like 5 billion cells up here, and inside here is everything you've ever heard, seen, experienced, something your old aunt told you, the movies, everything in your life is here. But you can't get at it. Usually you can't even get a telephone number out of it. And so what you have to do, now you have some idea or thought or subject, you take that out and you then open up these channels. Open up these channels and let it play around with that and get associations. I write a column every week, and I would tell you that unless I run on that column, it's half what it would be. I sit down and I write at the typewriter what Thurber used to call mud. You just type away. You try this thing where it's just automatic writing, but it doesn't work. You just keep writing reams of stuff. It's all facts. It doesn't live. It doesn't make you laugh, cry, or do anything. And then I take it out, and I run with it. And then I'll come back and do it again. I'll take it out and run with it again. And all the time I'm getting new association I never thought of. Sometimes I'll go out on the road and out of the blue, a complete thing will come to me, completely written. So there on the roads you find this creative life. You become the artist. So first the animal, then the artist, and next the hero.
Jim McGowan, a 54-year-old paraplegic, is quite a unique fitness story.
The English Channel is the greatest physical, mental, emotional, and really spiritual challenge of my life. The reason why, because it's going to take everything that I have in order to make this a success. Of course, I'm training harder than I've ever trained for anything physically. I have to be psychologically prepared for that challenge as well. I mean, so it's a psychological challenge. I'm swimming across 22 miles of open sea in water that's choppy, sometimes turbulent, that's filled with lots of debris, and it's cold, and it's a heavily trafficked body of water as well. And the shorelines of France are rocky. That's what that English Channel means to me. It's the kind of challenge that I think every human being wants to have in his lifetime. Fitness, of course, was liberation, not in a, strangely enough, physical fitness was a liberation, not in a physical sense. It was sort of a spiritual liberation, because being fit caused me then to become more creative. You know, you have a clearer mind, you can think more clearly. And it was an intellectual liberation. The things that I wanted to do, to write about, I was able to write because my mind was clearer now, because my body was fit. And this is strange too, because, well, not really strange, but significant, because here I was now a disabled person whose body was disabled, but yet, once that body, even though disabled, was fit, it enabled me to think more clearly and to feel better about myself. We're only limited by our imaginations. And I said, what about skydiving? I said, well, there's a challenge that I really would like to undertake. At the same time, it will be broadening the horizons of disabled people. And I began to pursue the thought of skydiving. And that became a reality actually in 1981. So that's what happened. So to date, I have 20 skydives. Being fit enables me to undertake the kinds of challenges that make me a whole person, such as skydiving and swimming the English Channel.
We are here to be heroes, and that is the primary motive in our life, is to be a hero. It's hard to acknowledge, but James put his finger on that. He said our essential reality is that the world is a theater for heroism. And he spoke of a moral equivalent of war, some way we could be a hero. We all have to do something that is heroic, and that primary thing that disturbs us is, why am I not doing something that has meaning, that has some importance, that is heroic? And we all must be legends in our own time. You know the great poem by Houseman of the athlete dying young, and he speaks regretfully of people who the legend died before the man. And you know what happens occasionally, and it happens with me, you find someone died and you thought they were dead already. You know? They had stopped living, in a sense. They had stopped pushing. They had stopped trying to pursue that dream, the unreachable star, you know, the pursuit of the Don Quixote. It's inside of us. We must do something heroic. And that's what we find in the run. There has to be some moral equivalent of war, some place where you'll do something that takes you to the limit of your endurance. And James said, life is to be made in doing and creating and suffering. We have to introduce that. Life is boot camp. Let's look at it that way. We are here now to be heroes. One of our problems is we sell ourselves short. Abe Maslow once said that history is simply a chronicle of human nature being sold short. And our novels, our biographies, are simply that chronicle of selling ourselves short. Because we don't think we can be athletes, we become spectators. Because we don't think we can be artists, we become consumers. Because we don't think we can be heroes, we become followers. And finally, because we don't think we can be saints, we become sinners. We can be all these things. Emerson spoke of the common man, the great qualities, and he was speaking of us. He said of the common man what Plato thought he can think. I read that, I said, this man is out of his mind. See? How could I think what Plato thought? And then in the later part of one of his essays, he explains it to me. He said, the philosopher spends his life trying to put into words what the common man experiences. That's why what Plato thought we can think. That's why when I'm saying here, up here on the stage, you've already heard, you already know. I'm not going to tell you anything tonight you already don't know inside your bones, so to speak. And so he said what Plato thought he can think, what the saint felt he can feel. Absolutely. There's no difference in a race in feelings between the winner and the last person. It's identical. Identical. You go down after a race and look around and try to figure out who the winner is, and I'll guarantee you won't know. We all win, that's it. But fortunately, life is not a skill sport. You see? James said, effort is the measure of a man. We're all winners. That's what we must know. Blake said, everything that lives is holy. Can you believe that? You are already a winner. The only problem is whether you're going to win with class or not. Whether you're going to win like Pete Rose. You can make the major leagues, but are you going to come in and give 110%? Are you going to become that person that you're supposed to be? See, partly we've been lost in the idea that we are somehow immutable. Back in the 60s, you see, we're in the 80s now, and it's a completely different ball game. This is a classic ball game we're in now. We've come back to the classic idea, this Greek idea, this arete, function, making the self. And so we look on ourselves now as Plotinus did, and Plato, and the great Greeks, philosophers, that we are simply raw material. We are raw material. And we go to work on that raw material. Now it's up to us to create that self. And so you see in St. Vincent de Paul, in the letter that he wrote to the Little Sisters of Charity, and he said, we are simply blocks of marble from which the sculptor takes the statue. That's it, raw material. And he said, first you must take the hammer, and then the chisel and the fine instruments. And so this is what we're doing. We are taking the hammer to ourselves and making that animal, making that artist, making that hero, and then finally becoming saints, because that's what we're here for. You see, there is, as James said, the greatest book on religion, the varieties of religious experience, and he himself an agnostic, said religion is the most important function of man. And he went through the varieties of religion, and he said you can define every religion by 3 precepts. First, as we stand here, there is something the matter with us. As I stand alone, there is also something good in me. That's the primary thing. There is something good in you. But there is also a lack of that good. And then there is a greater good that is completely good. And somehow we make a connection with that. And then as we stand there, we are saved. That's what we must see this good in us. And it's in the body that we finally have these good experiences. Paul Weiss, the philosopher at Yale, he was a sterling professor of philosophy at Yale, at one time took notice of the time that students spent on sports rather than their books. And he wrote a book, Sport, A Philosophic Inquiry. And what he discovered, he said, was this excellence, that the students tasted of excellence in their body that prefigured an excellence that they would find in their mind and later in their soul, because that's the evolution we go through, the body and then the mind and then the soul. And he gave an expression, he had an expression in his book, and I've never seen it before or since, but it really puts the whole thing in context. He said, the athlete instantiates man. In one instant, in an athlete, you see man, complete, total, successful, you see. And in some way, in that metaphor, you see us successful mentally and spiritually. When we see man in athletics, we see man as a success, and only then, almost. I was studying a thing about art, and I read a quote by Eric Gill about art. And he said, the artist isn't a special kind of person. He said, every person is a special kind of artist. And I thought of that, and I thought, the athlete isn't a special kind of person. Every person is a special kind of athlete. The hero isn't a special. Every person is a special kind of hero. And so with all our functions. But we start here. We begin here. We begin with the body. See? I am my word made flesh. That is it, you see. This is the incarnation of my personality. You see me. You know me through my body. You see my soul through what I am now. Ruskin once said that they say taste isn't important. He said, tell me what you like and I'll tell you who you are. Emerson said, hide your thoughts, you might as well hide the moon. This is it. We are in the process of making souls. We make our body and make our mind and make our soul. We are capable of things beyond our imagination. James, in 1906, speaking to his fellow philosophers, spoke on the energies of man. He said, to what extent do we have energies? Physical, mental, social, spiritual. He said, all of us lead lives inferior to ourselves. That's the point. Inferior to the self. The same idea of arete, not to be superior to other people, but to that self that you are. To make that. Take all this potential. Now this seems to be wild and extravagant exaggeration to make all this point about simple movement where you put one foot in front of the other. But you go back and you see Thoreau, he said, somebody said to him, you exaggerate. Exaggerate? He said, of course I exaggerate. It's the only way to tell the truth. So we keep going back to James. The strenuous life tastes better, he says. He said, if you have not felt guilt and pain and death, you have not been initiated. He called always for the ascetic life and athletic training. That was, we feel fulfilled in that. Our life seems to take on meaning because we have done these things. We will certainly, as somebody said, live in the uncomfortable zone, and when you die, you'll have no regrets. We have to fulfill our function. We have come here, as Emerson said, to do something that no one else can do, to bring a message that no one else bears, to be a self. We are, each one of us, a unique, never to be repeated event. The question is, will we occur? Is that event going to occur? George Bananas, I remember in his Diary of a Country Priest, he said, some people have neatly folded, unused souls that have never seen the light of day, so to speak. Fitness is the beginning of all this. Adds years to your life, certainly. That gets to be looking a little mundane right now. Hours to your day, absolutely. Performance. Handles stress, makes you an artist, makes you a hero, and eventually become a saint. I'd tell you one little story to close. I live in a little town that's it's a fishing town. And we have these charter boats that go out in the morning about 6:30 or 7 o'clock. And that's the end of the day till they come back. So here's this town completely deserted. And I'm running through town. I am the king of this kingdom. And I'm enjoying myself beyond belief. I want to tell you, I just love to sweat. I found and I think that's one of the reasons women love exercise. They have found the world, the other side of sweat, which they've never experienced before. So, and I think that sweat is the supreme proof of consciousness. You know, Descartes said, cogito ergo sum. And Mishima, the Japanese novelist, said that pain was the only proof of consciousness. How do you like that? But for me, sweat is the proof that I'm alive. So here I was, in charge of this community. And I turned the corner, and here's this fellow up on a scaffold shingling a house. And this man is magnificent. He's about 40, just has Levi's on, has this tremendous upper body. I have a tremendous lower body. And here he was, shaping the shingles to put onto the eaves, you see. And I don't know why I did this, because I'm a very private person. I'll go across the continent in a plane, won't say hello to the guy next to me. But anyway, as I reached this fellow, I looked up and I said, do good. Like, I'm in charge, really, and I want. Turns around and looks down at me, 10, and he said, intend to. Just like that. And I don't know why I didn't let it go at that. But I called up and I said, God is watching. He turns around then and he looks down and he said, hope so. And it occurred to me, you see, here is a man doing what he does best, doing something he thinks is important, doing it the best way he can, and hoping that God is watching. And as I ran back home then, I was thinking to myself about the running, say, something that Gerard Manley Hopkins, the poet, once said. He said, this is me, for this I came. That was him, not shingling, you see. That's what James once said. He said, what you think is important is important. The important thing is to have something that you think is important. That's it. And to invest yourself in it. And in the process to be making this self. So I'm going home then thinking, I too hope God is watching me, and feeling fulfilled in that. Thank you very much.